Hello and welcome back to OCD Coded. My name is Erin Brown, licensed marriage and family therapist and mental health counselor. I have OCD myself, and my goal here is to help you learn to understand OCD better and to use it, as a superpower and to be able to have it be something that really helps you and learn its tricks that, especially about seeking assurance, that, ways that people try and help with OCD end up feeding the OCD and how to discern between the two. So today talking about the DISC profile, which is something I think more counselors could benefit from using. It talks about organizational behavior, which so much about psychology is individual in a lot of ways, but with being, marriage and family, which is also very systems oriented, then looking at the DISC, which is used by a lot of corporations and the military and that kind of thing, helps to understand like the different roles and teams and the value of all the roles and how they work together, how to kind of talk to them differently, and um, how to know what they need to hear. And it reminds me a lot of parts work, but it's external. And I think of the Myers-Briggs as understanding what's going on inside in a lot of ways, and this disc as being um, how to understand like those interpersonal relationships and how you apply that inside and how you use your energy is a big part of it. And each of the letters use their energy differently, and knowing how, like, what they're kind of going for, what their insecurities are, all of those kind of things can really help to be able to meet them where they are. The goal is not to be manipulative with it, obviously, but that to understand that we don't all see the world the same way. And can I first try to understand the world from someone else's point of view, and before I expect them to understand my point of view, and how difficult that is, but what a skill and what an important aspect of all of this that is. And so for the DISC profile, it's an acronym. It's DISC. And so DISC, for the D, it's more of the kind of dominant, decisive kind of attitude. They're very task driven. They don't care how it gets done. They just want it done. They want it done now. I always think of a time, so many counselors are some of the other letters, which are not as like that. Like we're more like, oh, how are you? And have some of the kind of small talk stuff beforehand, even in emails. And I had this one office manager who wouldn't respond to me if I emailed a bunch of stuff and wouldn't answer any of my questions. And but when I was learning about the disc, I was like, oh, she's a D. I just need to write her one sentence, like do this. And I thought it felt so mean, but she, like, as soon as I started doing that, she started responding and doing exactly what needed to be done right away. And I was like, oh, I wish I had done this sooner. So there's that. That's helpful to know, just like, again, like how it's a different way to look at the person, that it's not their way of doing things isn't wrong. Your way of doing things isn't wrong, but we can kind of reach across this bridge of miscommunication and learn how to meet each other where we are in the middle. So for the I can be the like influencer is one of the words before, influencer was the thing for social media and all that, but that more of in that inspiring kind of idea of it can also be impulsive, and where the D uses their energy about trust me, the I uses their energy about like me. And so that can be, that could be portrayed as a different way, where the S, which comes later, which is kind of like the stability one, the like really one of their parts of their shadow side is too permissive of poor performance for the S's. And when I first heard that, I felt very attacked, but it was also very true that, that either staying in a relationship too long, or, with workers or whatever it was, that like I would let boundaries go too long before setting them. And then there could be this like whiplash of like, okay, I need to set this boundary, but I can't. I feel bad. And that guilt and how it controls you. And then getting to the point where it's like, oh my gosh, and it bursts out, and then the person's like, what is even happening? And then feeling bad about that, and then the cycle continues. And so, and that the S, one of the ways they control things is by slowing down. And that was another one that I felt very attacked with. I was like, okay, but that like deciding not to decide can be part of that, or all of the different ways that slowing down or being like, okay, I need to do all this other information first is a way of avoiding doing the thing. But, and that's part of it is just we're all going to do that to some extent at certain times, but so much of the practice of it is to say, to just pause and try to assess ourselves without judgment, to be like, okay, am I doing this? What is my intention behind this? Am I doing this for what reason? Um, can I be honest with myself? Can I forgive myself quickly and then move to the next thing? Um, and move into action and not, and just be more aware and how much of a difference that makes. So, the C is another one, is the last one for talking about. It's more like compliance and conscientious. They use their energy about inform me, and so much of the um, like want information to understand. And that's something that I notice like I's and C's get so stuck in when they're trying to communicate, because C's think that giving more information will help the person understand, and I's think if they exaggerate their emotions, they'll get the other person to understand. And that, leads to a lot of different things. And so, a lot of different miscommunications, I should specify. And, that like the I controls by verbal persuasion, and some of their shadow side is they talk too much, they need to be liked. Whereas the C controls by information, and, their shadow side is they talk too little or too intellectual. And the D is kind of controlled by that force of character. Their shadow side is aggressive and forceful, impulsive. And for the S, their shadow side, the too permissive of poor performance and adapting to change. So, and everyone has all these letters in within them, and to varying degrees, and it can be helpful to know which ones are high in different environments, or when you're stressed or not stressed. But it definitely, just being able to look at it that way of, there's these different forces within us that are pushing and pulling at us, and that it's not that we are good or bad, or there's one way to do thing that is right or wrong, but that, if we can understand it from this point of view, it helps to take it, that not feel as personal, and to take all that out of it, which can be helpful when trying to come to some kind of collaboration with another person. And just how much that keeps being reiterated, that first, I work to understand myself, and then I can validate myself and work from that center, and then really work to understand the other before I expect them to understand me. And how much that starts to shift things, and it can be hard because it's just like, why there's a lot of grief, a lot about like always having to be the one to go first, but it's the way it is. I call it emotional chicken otherwise, like we're all waiting for the other person to be vulnerable first. So I hope that you get outside your comfort zone this week, and maybe face a fear and or something that you've been avoiding, and find some way to honor yourself in that, and really shine your light out in the world. So I will talk to you next time. Hope you have a good one. Bye.